All right, do we have any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm very concerned about all of the corporations and the influence that they have had on our politics and on our politicians. There's been very little regulation. We see that from the oil companies to from cell phone companies, outrageous prices. We need to have a representative who is going to be concerned about these issues. So I'd like to know what position our candidates have in regards to doing some regulation on some of these industries who seem to be jerking us around.
Okay, and I believe Mr. Shepard, if you can.
You know, there's a popular term that you hear in some political discussions called regulation versus deregulation. I think we all have a concept of what that means, but it's a lot different when you apply it to big business and the leverage, the economic leverage they have, and small businesses, which actually make up the backbone of our economy, both here in North Alabama and around the country. I think it's important to realize when you're talking about small businesses that it's tough to make it. And my wife and I know that because we've owned businesses. I'm an attorney, but we've owned businesses as well. It's tough to make it when you're trying to make a payroll and you're up all night working on paperwork for a bureaucrat. But that is a totally different world from when Exxon makes $40 billion and decides to use some of it to basically buy an election. And I think that's what you're talking about. There was a disastrous 5-4 Supreme Court opinion recently, and I think you all know about that. It is not a matter of free speech. It is a matter of danger to our democracy when a corporation that makes more than some countries can come in and spread that money around and subvert our government. And I would like to see immediately everyone who is running for Congress anywhere in this country say they want to look at ways where we can bring corporate spending under control in this political sphere. Because the only way you're going to get justice for the individuals that you're concerned about, whether it's social or legal or other or moral, is if we get our government under control. As long as huge corporate interests can buy government, there is really no concern for the individual. And I really appreciate you bringing that up because that is a peril to us and to our children. Thank you.
There's quite a bit of Federal Election Commission paperwork you have to go through to just do what we're doing right now. It's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of control right now. It's just that the electorate has to be able to look at someone like our congressman on television and ask, is he getting all this publicity simply because he's paying for it? Versus, does he stand for anything? Is he going to do good when he gets to Washington, D.C.? People have to look television ads and ask themselves, is this just all an act? And we have a lot of controls. The FEC has a lot of controls on this. People have got to wake up when they see someone like our present congressman with these political ads. And they don't. You repeat a political ad enough, I don't care how much control there is for the FEC, it seems like there's going to be a lot of people who are going to believe it. I don't know any way to deal with that.
Parker Griffith has over $1 million on hand. And it's because consistently, instead of voting with the people of his district, he's voted with big insurance companies and large corporations. That's why he has $1 million on hand. That amount of money in our political system cannot be a good thing for anybody involved except the moneyed interests that are able to devote that much money to a campaign, and then essentially they'll own the politician when he's in office, and they will pass legislation that is good for that business. Now, I am not for regulating large businesses to an overextent, but money in politics has to be gotten under control. We need to look at campaign finance reform, and if this government is going to be of the people, by the people, and for the people, it is one of the most critical issues that we face going forward in our democracy. So.
I have a couple of thoughts, especially as it pertains to this Supreme Court decision. I've noticed that the discussion on freedom of speech For heaven's sakes, we've lost common sense. When does a corporation have freedom of speech? A corporation cannot get married like an individual. A corporation cannot vote like an individual. There are some rights that are reserved for individuals and not corporations. And we've reached an era where there are corporate citizens with true citizenry, I suppose. But let me mention that I'm in agreement. Once you have this much money involved from very few sources, Congress cannot do much about regulation. Congress can certainly pass laws to overturn what the Supreme Court has, but at some point it is up to us as people. That's the only way that we can stand up to the corporate influence, is to not be swayed by what the money can buy, and talk to the people and listen to the people and know what those individuals are planning to do. Anytime we've reached in our point in the economy and our society where you have corporations that are too large to fail, we have a fallacy in our system. You do that with regulation, you do that with legislation. I don't know the answer, but it's something that Congress needs to look into.
Can I just make one further
Yes.
point? Because recently in the newspaper, I was reading about how our oil companies were closing down refineries, saying that they were making enough money and not enough oil was being needed, so they were closing down refineries. But at the same time, we have been seeing the price of gasoline go up. Now, this is just one issue out of a number of issues that have not been addressed for at least 10 years or more while things have been deregulated. We also have a serious problem going on with the banking industry. I don't know if you've seen the PBS program called The Warning about the derivative industry not being regulated. There's too many things that have no regulation whatsoever that has led us down to this economic problem that we have now. And so we really need to have somebody who's going to go into office who's actually going to do something about this. It's more than just these corporations putting money behind the politicians to get them elected to office, but we need politicians who are actually going to do more than just have, say we're going to have a committee to meet and discuss this. 10 years later, the same issues and problems are still there. So hopefully whoever gets elected, we hope we have someone who is not Parker Griffith in office after this next year. One of you guys who will actually take action to try to bring about some kind of positive change. I think a lot of Americans are frustrated because we're not seeing the kind of progress that we think we should be seeing in improving the society here in the United States.